So welcome, Michael. It is lovely to have you back. So Michael is a former Hereford sixth form college student who is now doing a degree apprenticeship. So Michael, let's start. So what A-levels did you do at Hereford? How did they go? Tell us about your experience at Hereford.
Okay, I did computer science, maths, politics, and law. Yeah, they went really well. I was very pleased with the kind of grades I came out with and everything. I was actually quite surprised I did better than I thought I would have.
I'm surprised you're surprised you did so well. We knew you were talented. I remember your teachers always being super impressed.
Yeah.
And so you did the REACH program. And what were your choices? What were you thinking about for university or apprenticeships? Were you always just going for apprenticeships? Talk a little bit about your thought process.
Yeah, Reach was good. It was helpful for kind of the uni side of things, definitely, personal statements and that kind of thing, which also helps with the apprenticeships because for a lot of them, you have to write cover letters and they're similar, not quite the same, but certainly quite similar to personal statements. So that helped there. My kind of main focus coming into college was to do an apprenticeship, but I applied to uni as well as a backup option. So I considered applying to Oxbridge through Reach, but I decided not to because my main focus was apprenticeships. And I thought it would kind of focusing on entry exams and all of that would take away from the focusing on degree apprenticeships.
And then, so at what point, so you went through application to university, and then tell us, when did the apprenticeships open and what apprenticeships did you go for? How long did it take? Which one did you get? So tell us all about that process.
Okay, so the process is very different to uni. Because you're applying for a job, they open all sorts of times. So the first one I applied for was probably around the time I was applying for uni. And then, some still open all the way up until August. So it's such a wide range, and it's difficult as well because there's no centralized place for finding them. So I'm at IBM. They don't advertise on the government website. So the only way you can find them is to go to ibm.com/apprenticeships or whatever their website is and find it there. Typically, the process is the application opens. They send everyone who's registered their interest an email. You typically send a CV. Sometimes they ask for covering letters, or even some ask for like long form answers on just why you want to work for them. So certainly I applied to the BBC and I had to write 6 different paragraphs on why do you want to work for the BBC, why do you want to work in this area of the BBC, etc. Then typically they'll send you an email about assessment centres, and they're again so widely different. Some, you have interviews in them, some are a lot of group tasks. So yeah, it's all so different. Whereas uni was one application. It's yeah. But I think the main thing with apprenticeships is just apply for as many as possible. They take up a lot of your time applying for them, but I think I applied to about 15, and it's good to, I mean, I got more offers than I was expecting, but certainly just because you get a lot of rejections as well, because there's so many people applying for so few places.
And you were a top student. I mean, seriously world class. So that's a lot of drive. Tell us a little bit about what happened on your results day. So you got your absolutely stellar results, and then tell us what happened then.
So I got home from Hereford. We drove from where we've moved to, and then I got a phone call. I had like 8 missed phone calls, and I rung them back, and I got through, and it was JP Morgan who I had applied to, and got a reserve offer from, and they made me an offer. I declined and said I've already accepted an offer at IBM. They offered me more money than IBM had offered me and a relocation bonus, but I obviously turned them down because we had moved house for IBM and I wanted to work for IBM. So yeah.
And also the other thing is that they probably were looking at you because of your results as well, because you did so well academically, and they're looking at top class people they want to join their professional body. But still, having IBM and JP Morgan fighting over you, no bad thing. And tell us a little bit about what would happen with the application process. So often apprenticeships open quite quickly. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so one of the big things is that they open and they close. So IBM opened at about 8 a.m, I think, and they were closed by midday. As soon as they meet their quota, for how many applications they want or how many they're expecting. They tend to close the applications. Some companies don't. I know some people like BAE, I saw their applications were open for quite a long time, but a lot of companies will open it, meet their quota and close sometimes the same day.
Gosh, so you need to be really organized with your emails.
Absolutely.
And how did you hear about those opportunities? How did you hear that they were opening?
Yeah, so I mean, well, LinkedIn's quite helpful for that, because a lot of them get posted as just normal job ads on LinkedIn, because LinkedIn scrapes the internet to look for different jobs. Joining all their waiting lists, and also doing like online, some offer, JP Morgan certainly did offer online work experience programs. And then after that, you can send them your CV, they'll keep you on their waiting list and then send you relevant jobs. So I got a couple of emails about entry level kind of gap year schemes and that kind of thing. And then when their apprenticeship opened, same day I got an email saying their apprenticeship had opened at like 8 in the morning. I applied straight away, and theirs was also closed by about 1. So yeah.
And then how did you first get in contact with IBM? Because at college, we have a kind of week where the students will be able to go and experience the world of work. Tell us a little bit about your contact with IBM and how that started.
Yeah, so in year 10, we had a work experience and we couldn't find anywhere. We ended up knowing someone who knew someone who worked at IBM, and they were able to get me a week's work experience there. I had no idea about apprenticeships at that point. My plan was to go to uni, do computer science, come out and get a graduate job. And then kind of there, we talked about career options on the kind of last day. And they said, I was saying what I was planning to do, and they said, why are you planning on doing that? IBM does apprenticeships. And that's kind of when I discovered degree apprenticeships. And I stayed in contact with them ever since, making sure they remembered my name, basically emailing the manager like, hello, I'm applying in 3 years, I'll be applying in 2 years, etc., probably annoying them a little bit. But yeah.
That's brilliant. I love the idea that you actually emailed the boss at IBM. I'm applying, I am going to apply. That's brilliant. But I actually think those are some really good tips. So definitely, if you get work experience, any kind of work experience is a bonus. And also, if you do get to do some work experience, show willing, really, really be positive, keep your name known. LinkedIn, to make sure that everyone's really clear, is a kind of professional platform. It's an app where you have a professional profile and you can put your status as open to jobs, you can share conversation, and it is really, really important that you would definitely use LinkedIn. Also, of course, very important to be aware that any employer, any potential employer for the rest of your life will look at your social media profiles too. They'll look at your email address, how you behave in your social world. So it's also super important that we are aware of how we behave in those different environments. But that is really helpful, particularly the fact that how quick you have to get the application in if you get those emails.
Just on the note of social media as well, IBM actually asked for social media details. More for people working on public sector contracts who have to have background checks. But they do ask for it on everybody. So yeah, certainly on that point on social media, make sure it's all something you wouldn't mind your employer seeing.
Yes, I completely agree. Still same for me, even now. And so the process sounds quite time consuming. How did you manage that alongside doing your A-levels as well? Because you were doing 4.
Yeah, it was really hard because I mean, I had like so many days off for assessment centers and interviews and everything. That was one of the hardest things, I think, taking the time out and then catching up with college work and not letting apprenticeship applications drop your grades. Yeah, it's the main thing is just making sure you stay on top of it. Like I made myself a massive spreadsheet of everything, all the apprenticeships I applied for, and kind of where I was in the process. Because again, even tracking where you are in the process is difficult because they all have different processes. So
and that sounds also highly organized. I think that thing of catching up, and I think this is so important because I think what's really useful for students to know is that degree apprenticeships are absolutely fantastic and really, really credible. They are, however, few and far between and super competitive. What you're saying, though, in those applications is you couldn't have written those bits for the BBC without doing your research. So you had to do research for all of the ones you applied for. And that's also something I think that's really important for current students to know, is that if they were considering that, they really need to do their research, have that drive, be really organized, and actually probably be quite a lot more organized than people who are applying for universities if you want those degree apprenticeships.
Yeah.
Is that your experience?
Yeah, definitely. And every application has to be unique to the company. So how I structured my CV and how I found it worked quite well was looking through the company's website and finding their core values. And then basically how I did it was had all my jobs and education history, obviously, but then put in a point for each of their core values and show how I've demonstrated that in some way. So I don't know, I worked at Asda, so I demonstrated teamwork by working within my team in the college, in the produce department in Asda, to make sure that stuff was on the shelf, stuff like that. And I think that went a long way, especially because then the interviews I found were quite centered around their core values for most companies. So then it's easy to point to those points in your CV and make them relevant in the interview as well. And it just helps you a lot.
That is brilliant. I mean, super useful. And also, I think completely so true. You know, even for example, coming to work at the college, you would want someone to know our core values as a college. And that would really mark you out as someone who's done their research, who knows the stuff about your place of work. And the other thing is knowing how to market yourself to those particular companies. So then tell us a little bit about your IBM experience. So tell us about the experience of applying to them.
Yeah, so I mean, they were the company I wanted to work with from the start. So I'm glad I got it at all, and everything. They opened, I want to say around February, something like that. Their application was quite simple. It was just a basic education history, work history, and that was about it, purely factual stuff and a CV. Then they kind of filter people down. Obviously, they get a lot of applications from people who might not be eligible from different countries, etc. So they just filter that down, and then they send you a more detailed application form, which actually gets you to do the core values thing of breaking it down. And then I got invited to an assessment center. That was actually quite fun. They are quite fun, just working and doing random little meaningless group tasks. And then after that, you get put in a big pool of people if you get accepted from the assessment center, and hiring managers who are looking for apprentices can see all the details you submitted, your assessment center scores and everything, and then pull you out of that pool. And I got pulled out for 3 roles, and then you're interviewed for those roles. The interviews tend to more be focused on making sure you fit the role well, rather than the same sort of interviews, to make sure they put you in the right role that you want to do, rather than being skills-based, more stressful, I guess, interviews.
And are they assuming you don't have the skills, or are they assuming you've got the skills already?
I'm in a team that works on something that I've never touched before, so it's definitely ground zero. I mean, my team deals with a product that's 60 years old, so it's ancient stuff that I've never dealt with. So it's really interesting, though.
What are you doing with this technology that's 60 years old?
Yeah, so I mean, Kix is basically a tool that manages transactions on a mainframe server. Right. So we maintain it. So any customers that have problems with it, they send a ticket to first the team above us, who might solve issues that are easy to solve. And then if it's more complicated, an issue with the code, typically it comes to us, and then we will go into the code, try and recreate the problem, fix it, test it, and then send it back out to the customer.
Amazing. So and how soon after you finished college did the job start?
September. So
so you did have the summer.
So you do get a summer. Yes.
Very good. And did they ask for particular grades in your offer?
Yes. So it's IBM based it on UCAS points. So their base entry requirement was 112 UCAS points, which isn't too many. because they kind of say, once you pass that assessment center, you're into IBM, we want you. It's just getting you into the uni. And people that I've spoken to who have started, some people didn't meet that requirement and they still took it up with the unis and got them a place. So I think grades can help get you in the door, and certainly those particular grades are essential for that.
Definitely.
But once you're there and you've passed that assessment center and you've got a role and they want you, I think it's less stressful.
I would agree. And I think what's interesting is we find is that some of those really competitive apprenticeships, you are up there with other super, super bright individuals who are driven, who are really putting themselves out there alongside working for their A-levels or BTECs. But I do think that is, as you said, a foot in the door. And then tell us a little bit about how does it work with the work and the kind of university side?
Yeah, so I have Friday as my university day. So my university course is self-paced. So there's seminars which you can attend live, which you can just book out of your workday as meetings. But the rest of the lectures and all the assignments the lectures are all pre-recorded, so you can watch them in your own time. Recommended day is Friday because you get the day off. And then you'll be given assignments for that week or section of that module that you complete and submit, typically by the Monday. So the best day again to do that is the Friday. But it's managing that can be hard, because obviously it's a whole uni degree, and mine's, so a lot of degree apprenticeships are 4 years. My university does the course in 3, so it's that whole degree with a year taken out. So it's quite intense.
Oh my gosh, you're doing a degree in 1 day a week.
Yes.
Fair play, well done. And who are the uni with? Which course is it with?
Yeah, so mine's the New College of Humanities at Northeastern. So it's a uni in the UK that was brought by a uni in America that offer the degree. But IBM do it with loads.
And what degree will you come out with?
It's called Digital and Technology Solutions Specialist, and it's bachelor's. So
wow. I mean, that is a huge amount. So you're working 4 days a week, full time. You have 1 day a week where you're doing all of your uni learning and assessments. You're saying that's from a Friday to a Monday. That's sometimes due. That's a lot. And that, I think, is the other thing that's really important for people to hear, that again, apprenticeships, obviously you are earning and you come out with a degree at the end of it as well, but it is significant time, to put in. I mean, you're working more than full-time hours, presumably.
Yeah, definitely. Well, yeah, 37 hours a week is the work, let alone kind of the additional stuff, the homework and assignments and all of that. Yeah.
So I think that's the other thing to really consider, is actually it is a huge positive to kind of go for those apprenticeships, but absolutely don't think that when you're in the door that it is an easy option. And tell me about how it is going back into a kind of really professional environment straight after sixth form. How is that? And are you enjoying that? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think one of the nice things is, so IBM's biggest business is consultancy, but I'm not in consultancy, I'm in technology. So one of the nicer things is that I'm in technology and it's a bit more of a casual work environment, but still it's a big change from even college to be in that kind of professional environment where it's adjusting to a corporate environment as well. Something obviously I've never experienced at college or school, where you've got 30 managers above you and massive companies. It's a big adjustment, certainly.
And what would your hints and tips be? So something I'm going to start talking more about this year with the students is using, for example, LinkedIn and other professional platforms. And actually now the students have access to a virtual college module, which is like a MOOC that we've created for students to think about all the options, which includes degrees, apprenticeships, LinkedIn, all of those different things, writing a CV, for example. What would your hints and tips be for students who are considering different options?
Okay, yeah. LinkedIn's brilliant because you can just go on, like before I even applied, I connected with the people doing the assessment center. So they already knew my name, which
That's
is
cool.
helpful. But the biggest thing is get a job. The biggest thing that I was able to speak about in my interviews was how I've demonstrated stuff through my job, even though it's working in Asda and it's just a part-time, self-stacking, you can still demonstrate everything they want through that work. And also it shows that you can balance that studying and working. So I think that was probably the best decision I made for apprenticeships, was to get a job.
That is amazing. And I completely agree, because it is that capacity. You were
Mhm.
doing 4 tough A levels at the top of the levels. You were seriously considering the most competitive degrees in the world, whilst considering the most competitive apprenticeships. And I think that's really healthy for students to see, is to kind of have that commitment to yourself, and actually to say, yes, I've got that capacity. I'm going to really work for my subjects, whilst I have kind of eye on the future. And where would you see your career going? I know we're really very much at the beginning of it, but where might you see that going in the future?
I think that's hard when when it's a company like IBM. I mean, I have so many options even now. Like, so in the third year, one thing I didn't mention was that you specialize in a certain area. So most likely I'll be doing software engineering, but there's so many different choices there of specialism. So I mean, even there's options that can lead you down different paths. But
Wow.
I don't know. Possibly IBM offer to graduates of their degree apprenticeship a master's degree apprenticeship.
Wow.
So I'll probably consider that in the short term, and then in the long term, just seeing where it takes me, whether I end up working for IBM for 30 years, like some people in my team, or what happens. I have no idea.
Very exciting. Michael, it's been such a pleasure to talk to you and actually catch up and find out how you're getting on. But I think you've just given us some really, really useful hints and tips. And also, I think it is really useful for students to see someone who's gone into a degree apprenticeship and gone through this really rigorous process of applying. So thank you so much for your advice. Nice to
Okay.
chat.
Yeah.